Hi everybody, this is John Walter with Southeast Advocate, and I want to speak with you for a moment about an interesting topic, and that is how to know if somebody is following you and what to do about it and in what cases it may occur. And now I'm not talking about in every circumstance, different people may be followed for different reasons. I'm just talking about the specific circumstance of if you are injured and you may have a lawsuit, and under what circumstances a defendant may hire a private investigator to follow the injured plaintiff. And so I'm a former defense lawyer, licensed to practice law in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and I have experience working on the defense side, helping corporations to hire private investigators to follow plaintiffs who had been injured and to try to understand whether or not the plaintiff was being truthful in their claim. And so I have some experience in this area, and I just wanted to share it with you just to provide some insight. And so the first thing you want to understand is the type of case where a defendant might hire a private investigator. And typically, it would be a case where, one, the potential exposure is large. You pay a few $1,000s to a private investigator, and they would only do this if it could potentially save them more money in the long run. And some cases can be very costly to defendants and very lucrative to plaintiffs. And so they can spend a few $1,000s and potentially save hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. It is a worthwhile investment for the defendant, so it actually happens quite often. And so it's usually going to be a chronic injury. When it appears, it's going to be an ongoing claim that this person has suffered harm, but the harm is continuing to occur, and it is impacting their everyday life, and therefore, the defendant is trying to find evidence as to whether or not the plaintiff can conduct themselves in ordinary manners, or if in fact they identify that they are having difficulty doing what they're claiming, then that might influence the defendant in pursuing a settlement. And so there's two different types of investigation that will happen towards a plaintiff. And so the first one is social media. And there's when I say two different types, there's two different types of professionals even that will handle this. So the social media one and then the in-person investigation. For social media investigations, it's companies that specialize in this. They will find any social media profile that an individual has on all of the different accounts, and they will go through the entire account from start to finish, and they will have an eye for what the claim is. So if the person is claiming a knee injury, they will be looking for anything that shows the plaintiff that's walking or standing even. Anytime that person is using their knee, the person will document it and will create a summary which is sent to the defense lawyer, which is reviewed and which is then sent to the corporate client. The second type of investigation is in person, and this is where you actually have somebody who will follow you. The way it usually occurs, it's not constant, and so it's not going to be over months. It's usually going to start on a single day where they will usually begin by passing by people's home. They'll find your address, pass by the home, they'll document the time they go by, what they see, they'll identify what vehicles are in the driveway, they'll get the license plate numbers, they will work to identify the owners of each of the vehicles at the residence, and they'll do that a few times, maybe on a single day over the course of 2 days. And they're familiarizing themselves with the plaintiff, where they live, vehicles, and see if they identify any activities occurring around the house. This would, yard work, bringing groceries in and out, whatever it may be. And then they will identify if and when, what times you're leaving the house. And so they will not park on your street, and they, you know what I'm saying? They're not going to be next to your neighbor's house, waiting for you to leave your house. What they'll do is identify a common entry point to your neighborhood. And they park outside of that. So let's say there's a main exit to your neighborhood and there's a shopping center next to it with a lot of cars parking there. They'll park in that shopping center and they will wait to see the type of car that the plaintiff drives leaves the neighborhood. And at that point, from a distance, they will trail the plaintiff and try to keep a safe distance, keep a distance to where they don't know that they're present, but yet they don't lose track of them. Sometimes they will lose track of them because they're not speeding, they're not doing anything that stands out. They're just trying to blend in with traffic. And they go to the destination and will photograph and video the plaintiff entering and exiting the vehicle. They're going into a grocery store, bringing the groceries out, loading them in the car, picking up a propane tank, whatever it may be. They're just documenting the evidence. And so they'll do this for a handful of days. And it's not always back to back. Sometimes it is. Usually in the beginning, they'll be back to back at first, and then they'll start spreading it out and they'll see what they can gather. So what do you do about this? So first off, know that it's common, but also know that it's legal and they're not trying to do anything immoral. They're not trying to do anything, they're not trying to have any kind of confrontation. They are simply trying to gather evidence as to whether or not, you're telling the truth as a plaintiff. And so what's most important is always tell the truth in all circumstances, whether or not you're in a lawsuit. And but the thing you want to be careful with is make sure you follow doctors' advice. So when you're injured, always promptly seek medical attention. I can do a separate video on that topic alone. I'll just hit it real quick. If you were injured on July 1st, and then you go to the doctor on July 10th, and they say, okay, yeah, you've got this injury. A defense lawyer will be saying, hey, what happened between July 1st and July 10th that also could have caused this injury, right? So you want to eliminate that gap of opportunity for other things to potentially have happened. And you want to say, okay, July 1st, you're injured. July 1st, you go to the doctor, all right? So you be prompt in seeking medical attention. And then follow that doctor's advice. Critically important. And so what I mean by that is, if the doctor tells you don't lift anything, then don't lift anything. Even if that means you have to change your lifestyle a little bit. So for example, they say you can't lift anything, but you always go shopping at Walmart usually. And so you just kind of go to Walmart and you get your groceries, you come out and you load them into your car painfully. Let's say it's painful for you. So you're ignoring doctor's orders, you're experiencing pain. Then a private investigator catches a picture of you loading groceries into your car. So if you're in front of a jury, you will have an opportunity to explain, hey, I always shop at Walmart. I love Walmart and I was experiencing pain while I was doing that. But guess what? Most likely your case isn't going to get that far. Most cases settle. Some cases go to trial. Most cases settle. But you know who is going to see that video is the defense lawyer, the corporate defendant, and they're going to be persuaded in how much they're willing to pay you in a settlement based on the evidence they have available to them. And they're not going to come to you and ask you, hey, were you experiencing pain when you were lifting things out and putting them into your car? No, they're not going to. They're just going to presume that you are lying. That's just the truth. They're just going to presume that, this person, he's claiming he can't lift, he's claiming that he has limitations, and look at him in this video lifting. So that's exactly where their mind goes, and it will immediately cost you tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, if that happens to you, if you are pushing yourself beyond what you should. So what you should do in that type of circumstance is go to Publix, where they have someone and you can ask someone at the counter, it's like, hey, I have an injury. Can you please have somebody load these groceries for me? And they will do that for you, and they do not accept tips. So It won't cost you anything. But except, public says charge more, so that's a sacrifice you make. So, and also a quick caveat or side note, footnote. Don't just go shopping at Publix because you're trying to create the illusion that, you can't lift things. I'm just saying, follow a doctor's advice. You're not trying to create, you're not going to start walking around with a cane if you don't need a cane just because you're trying to prove a point. Just follow a doctor's advice and don't push yourself. I think another good example of this, and this is an important point because so many people are stubborn. I'm sure you're probably thinking about it might be you who's injured, you might know a family member who's injured, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I know this person, they're stubborn. Talk to them about this. So my mother-in-law, for example, sweetest woman on earth, loves children and grandchildren more than anything. And she has chronic back pain. I think she has, fusions in her back perhaps. I'm not even sure, but she has chronic back pain. But when she's with her grandkids, it's almost like she loses 20 years of age and all of a sudden she can hop, dance, and she'll play in the bouncy house. She'll do whatever it takes to have a good time with her grandchildren. And then we're all just shaking our heads the whole time. But then afterwards, she's laying on her back on the bed with an ice pack and she can't move. And so you know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes we will push ourselves beyond what is, beyond comfort and into pain and beyond doctor's advice. So just be smart, don't be stubborn, seek doctor's advice and follow it. And I think one more example I want to provide. I was working as a defense lawyer on a case where the defendant was claiming a permanent knee injury with chronic ongoing pain. We hired both the social media investigation and the in-person investigation. And part of the social media investigation, he's claiming that it was painful for him to stand for long periods of time. And then as part of the social media investigation, they found a picture that the plaintiff didn't even take. It was someone else took this picture from the crowd of a wedding where the plaintiff was officiating. Now, he wasn't a pastor. He must have had some kind of, certification of some sort, and maybe he was known as a religious person, but he was asked to officiate his friend's wedding. And so he made that sacrifice. As you can imagine, he's that's an honor. So I don't know all the details. I never spoke to this person about that, but it's possible he was standing there in pain, officiating the wedding. And for a wedding, you have to stand up for a long time, especially as the person officiating. And that was captured. And I will tell you that it influences the defendant's willingness to settle. That something as simple as that can cause a defendant to say, you know what, there's a possibility that this person is lying. We're not settling this case. Let's push it further. Let's make them, we're going to push it. We're going to probe harder. We're going to keep going. We're going to perhaps even take this to trial because based on some of the evidence that we've seen, we don't even have to, we don't have to give in to this one yet. So, and one final comment. I've never seen a circumstance where the private investigator was noticed. These guys are good, okay? So I've never seen it in the report that I was spotted or, the guy's looking over, pointing at the camera guy or anything. And the defense lawyer, it might vary depending on state, but the cases I've been involved in, you do not need to produce this evidence until you decide to use it, right? So if you're a plaintiff and you're injured, this may happen and you may not ever know that it got captured. So just bottom line, moral of the story, A, don't bring false claims. B, if you get injured, promptly seek medical advice. 3, if you get that advice, follow it. And 4, don't be stubborn. Don't push yourself into pain. Avoid pain and seek legal counsel. Like if you've been injured, Seek compensation for your injury. I used to be a defense lawyer. I'm now a plaintiff's lawyer. And so it's my joy to watch and help people. As a defense lawyer, is highly sympathetic to the injured, because you see, we live in a fallen and a broken world, and we recognize that as people, as a society. And so we put in place insurance and laws that says, hey, we're not in a perfect world. So when injuries happen, when there's negligence or intentional harm, we are going to compensate. We're going to reallocate society's resources to try and help the harmed person to get back into a state as if it did not happen, as close as possible. And so it's seek compensation. It's a good thing for society. It's a good thing for you and your family. Like, we have systems and courts and insurance companies set up to accommodate getting you whole again. And sometimes the process of litigation seems contentious and it seems hard, but really it's just because you have two advocates, one on each side, and they're both going to be professional, and they're just trying to get to the bottom line of what actually happened. And by you following the doctor's advice and just being truthful, that increases the likelihood that truth will be found out and that just compensation will be paid. So anyhow, thank you for watching this video. I hope it is helpful.